morning and welcome back. Today we have the VZ-58 on the channel. Now I know Brandon Herrera posted his video last night or yesterday. He beat me by one day. I've been planning on doing this video for a while now and just haven't had a chance to get out here to the range. So first of all, this is a VZ-58. This one here is a Century Arms. Technically it's the VZ-2008. This one's actually a really low number. It's like number 143. So, you know, pretty early in the production. The Century Arm guns have kind of a hit and miss kind of reputation. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. This gun here, as far as I know from the previous owner, hasn't had any issues whatsoever. It is the folder. I did upgrade the furniture on it to some Fab Defense handguards, M-lock. Put a Magpul foregrip on it and a Fab Defense grip on it. Makes it very, very, very comfortable to aim and shoot. So let's go over a little bit of history on the gun. So this looks like an AK, but it is not an AK or an AK variant. I'll get into that a little bit more later on when we do the breakdown. I'll show you exactly how this gun operates and how it differs from an AK in every way. It looks like AK, but not AK. It is chambered in 7.62 by 39, just like the AK. And these do have a reputation of being more accurate than the AK. I don't know if that holds true with the Century Arms or the checkpoints, but the originals are said to be more accurate, and that comes down to the operating system, and the barrels are supposed to be more accurate as well. It is lighter than an AK. It is you know, about a pound to half a pound lighter, and with the exception of the selector, which isn't very ergonomic. If they had made it a selector on the other side, it would have been a little more ergonomic, but you can flip it into fire from with your index finger, and it's kind of weird. When you actually got it going, it's actionable, but it's still kind of hard. I've done some other upgrades too. Upgraded to an extended AMI mag release, and then a last round hole open bolt drop. So let's get into a little bit of shooting, and then we'll go from there. There's a rock and lock, just like an AK. You can see I did have a malfunction here. Ooh, and I seated that 7.62 in there pretty deep. Chances are, though, that's because it's an old rusty cartridge. So let's drop that off there. You see that last round hole open? You see a little bit of smoke? So these VZ-58s, because of the way their operating system is, they're known for getting kind of warm on the handguard, which is why I recommend doing a foregrip on these. You see that smoke going there. But you'll understand why here in a little while when I explain it down. You can see that last round hole open. It does hold open with the mag out of it, and with a little bit of gusto, or a lot of gusto, you can drop it with that side mag release. And there's a rock and lock. So let's go over to the bench and talk about it a little bit more. Alright guys, so now we're back at home, back on the table. Let's talk about the VZ-58 in a little bit more mechanical detail here. I was thinking about doing the breakdown over at the range, but I figure with the amount of shooting going on, it'd be a little easier to hear here back at back home. I don't know if you see in the background, the PPS-43 is mostly together. I will be doing an update video on that here soon, going over where I'm at with that. Anyways, back to the VZ. So, as I mentioned, basically what happened is with the VZ-58, it started with when Russia was doing their trying to standardize all the weapons for other satellite states. And it actually started with Czechoslovakia with the VZ-52 when Russia had put out the SKS. And basically they came out with the VZ-52, which looks very similar to an SKS, slightly a little different operating system, but kind of the same thing, 7.62x39. The original wasn't in 7.62x39. It was in another cartridge. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But quickly they had to switch over to the 7.62x39 to meet Russia's standardization. When Russia adopted the AK-47 and the AKM, of course, you know, Czechoslovakia had to upgrade as well. But them being how they are and not following the exact same protocol that the rest of the satellite states were, they went ahead and produced their own version. Well, not version, but their own replacement for the AK-47 AKM. So what they designed was the VZ-58. Now, it looks very similar to an AK, as I mentioned, but an AK it is not. First of all, the AK-47 and AKM, pretty much all the AK platforms, are a long stroke gas piston. Basically, you have your piston here and it's attached to the bolt, and the whole piston and everything moves back with it. Well, with the VZ-58, there's no gas piston attached to the bolt, and that's because this is a short stroke gas piston system. So that's the main thing that's different. One of the main things that's different about this versus the AK and platform. No parts from the AK platform will fit on this, and no parts from this will fit on any AK platform. Now, the short stroke gas piston is one of the factors that is said to be why the VZ-58 is more accurate than the AK. I've seen people shooting VZ-58s on YouTube 600 yards with iron sights. So it is a fairly accurate platform for the 7.62x39 compared to the AK-47. However, you're still limited to the cartridge itself. Now, as far as this assembly, something interesting about this gun. If it's been racked and its hammer is in the back position ready to fire, you cannot disassemble the gun unless it has been fired. As you see, it is clear. What's going on here? Huh. You seem to be having a malfunction of some kind. Okay, there we go. Anyways, so you can't disassemble the gun without it being fired and everything dead. So, unlike the AK where you have a push button to release the cover, you have a pin that pops out and it is contained like so. And then the cover comes off. Now, you can say that the VZ-58 is actually closer related to the SKS than it is the AK, and you're going to see why if you know about your SKSs. So, first thing that comes off is this cover, and you see your cover has both your springs. So the top one's your recoil and the bottom is your hammer spring. Your bolt comes back and it lifts up just like on an SKS or an AK. And if you look in there, you see no hammer, because this is not a hammer fired gun. This is more or less like a well, a lot of people misidentify it and call it a striker fired system, and that's not actually accurate, because with a striker fired system, the spring is actually contained onto the firing pin itself. So the spring directly propels the firing pin. But instead, with the VZ-58, what we have is a linear hammer. So that spring sits inside of here, and this catch right here catches just on this little sear surface right here. Which is interesting, because if you think about it, this gun has more in common as far as the way the hammer works to this PPS-43 than it does for an AK. Because on this is a pretty much as a slam fire gun, open bolt slam fire. But so as this travels forward off the spring, it strikes the firing pin, which is in the back of the bolt carrier right here. And we'll lift the bolt carrier out here. You got to kind of work it back and out like this. Now, what's interesting is the locking system on this is a little bit more similar to an SKS kind of, but it's more similar to a locking system that are in some pistols, such as the I believe the Walter, I think it's the P38 is similar to this. But essentially what happens, if I get this to go in here, when it goes into battery, boom, this cam locks down into the receiver right here, and it is locked in battery. When the piston strikes on that flat surface right there on the bolt, that little wedge right there drives itself up underneath the locking lug, lifts it up, and allows it to move. So interesting system, and relatively simple. So moving forward, same thing as far as that, pops that out, and the gas tube lifts up. And you can see here why when I was shooting, this thing gets so hot, and why I highly recommend a vertical foregrip on it. Because when the gas piston fires, lift this out, when it fires and reciprocates, let me take that spring out. When it fires and reciprocates, you see that's as far as it goes back right there. That's just enough, that gives it just enough inertia to push that bolt all the way back. But when it fires back like that, all that gas vents into the top of this top cover here and vents out the top in the middle right there and out the sides. So you're going to see why all this system gets really hot really fast, because you're venting the gas directly into here. Unlike with the AK platform, the gas is more or less retained inside of the gas tube and then vents out the top. So you're not getting so much direct heat directly on your handguard like you do. I'm going to grab a paper towel fast here. But that's basically the teardown for the VZ-58. This is as much as you ever need to take it down. You can see, everything's super simple on here. Now, I'm not sure if this will fire without the gas cover on it, or how it will function. That's a test that I may do here in the future to see if it will operate, because an AK-47 will operate without its gas tube. It may not function 100%, but it will, because the piston's attached to the bolt. And then with the AK-47, you can fire it without the gas cover, the dust cover. But unfortunately, with the VZ-58, that's not possible at all. Simply because, well, without the dust cover, you don't have your springs. So let's put the bolt back together in here like so. Bit of a method to get this in here. Essentially, you have to have you pull in the forward position. You can tell I haven't had this thing apart a whole lot as of yet. Okay. Alright. Sorry about that. So basically, what the problem is, you have to notice, if you look on, the hammer can't be removed out of the bolt without rotating out. There's a slight little cutout right there, and there's a, well, it looks like just a bead of weld that you have to put it into like so, and then rotate the bolt, and it can go in, and from there you can assemble it. And then you can actually put the gun together. Attempt to put the gun together. Okay, there we go. And of course, fire that. Alright. So it's a little trickier to put together sometimes than the AK. And of course, you got to make these springs go inside of these holes. Helps if you have your pin all the way out. Alright. Alright. So once you get the hang of it, it's like any other gun. Manual arms you have to get used to. As I had mentioned, I had upgraded the handguard to this Fab Defense, so it has M-lock on it. The original handguard, I have it in here somewhere. The original handguard in wood is what's called beaver bark. And essentially this is just resin mixed with wood fiber chunks. And, you know, this stuff here is infamous for getting really, really hot. And then, of course, you can't mount anything on it. So I went ahead and upgraded the handguard. Threw me the vertical foregrip on it. Threw on a pistol grip. Now, the folding stock, this spring was really tough in here, so I actually pulled it out, took the spring, cut the spring a little bit, so it is easier to work. Now, the folding stock is actually, originally stock is really uncomfortable to shoot. It'll bruise you. Plus, it doesn't give you a very high cheek weld because it's low. So the common thing to do is you wrap it in paracord and then thicken it up here, which makes it to where you have a good amount of a padding on it as well. So that gives you a good cheek weld and makes it to where it's standable to shoot, so you're not beating your cheek to death. On top of that, I went ahead and I upgraded to the tactical bolt release and the mag release. The original mag release was only on the left side, and it was actually recessed into the trigger guard, so you had to it made it to where you couldn't accidentally drop your trigger, but you also had to get in there to knock it out to drop your trigger. Now, it does rock and lock just like an AK, but now you can get to it outside with your if you want to do that rock and knock type reload, you can, or you can use your index finger right here. Now, the magazine may look like an AK mag, but this is not an AK mag. This will not fit in an AK, and an AK mag will not fit in here. This is a proprietary mag just to the VZ-58. And part of that is because it has the last bolt hole open right here, which AK mags do not have, and it was designed specifically for the VZ-58. Now, these are really high quality. They're light, they're aluminum, but they are a little bit on the expensive side, so keep that in mind if you're looking at a VZ-58. Now, right now, these are relatively rare. Even the import civilian models like this one, if you see them, chances are the only place you're going to see them is at Atlantic Firearms. They get them in every so often from Checkpoint. And I think there's one other producer. I don't know if Century Arms is producing these anymore, but they were. But when you do find them, Century Arms, they're going to be up there, anywhere between $900 to $1,500 when you do get them in stock. So keep an eye out for them. As far as running, you saw that one malfunction, and that was solely from bad ammo. I mean, that's some really rusty old Tula that was given to me. As far as muzzle devices on this, it just has your basic AK style slant muzzle brake, which works pretty good, but it does detent like so, and then you can unthread it the other direction, but you can unthread it. Now, this is, I believe, 1x14 left hand. It's the opposite of the Russian for the AK. So Russian muzzle devices will not fit on here. However, there are adapters out there that you can get, which I believe I have one in my bag of parts here. Actually, I don't have it in the bag of parts. Let me grab it. I think I know exactly where it's at. They have adapters that go on that make it for, I believe this is 5x24 right hand. So this will meet in most 30 cal domestic, muzzle brakes. So I got this, planning on putting a muzzle brake on here eventually. Haven't gone around to it. But the slant brake works pretty well. Now, the recoil impulse on it is a little bit snappier than even my AR. And part of that is the way that the whole system works. It is lighter than the AK by about a half a pound, but the bolt is relatively light as well. So it's got a little bit snappier recoil, but still easily controllable. None too crazy. Now, you do get a milled receiver on this. I believe they're all milled. I don't think these were ever made with stampings of any kind, which is good because you get a really strong receiver on it. Now, the biggest thing that I have an issue with this gun is this handguard. Not the handguard itself, but the fact that this thing will melt handguards. Only time will tell how well this one's going to hold up or see. But they do have a habit of melting handguards. Now, you can get wood furniture for these, and I've heard that the wood furniture holds up significantly better to heat than most of the plastic ones. There are some really, really cheap plastic handguards on our market, and they will melt with this gun. So keep that in mind. Now, as far as the sights go, very basic, almost like AK sights. See, it's graduated out for all the way up to 800 yards, or I guess this would be meters, but we all know that usually you're not going to be doing that with iron sights anyways. It's got a semi-guarded post up top. It does adjust with an AK tool for the elevation, and I don't believe it's adjustable for windage. It might be, but I'm not 100% on that as well for the front. But besides that, the way these guns are, they're designed very simply. Like I said, you can see by a lot of how it's put together, it's closer related to an SKS than it is an AK. But, you know, they're still good guns. If you want something that's a little different, that's not an SKS or an AK-47, and you do happen to stumble across these, I would go ahead and grab one. They are getting harder and harder to find and more expensive. And they are good guns. Like I said, the Century Arm ones have a bit of a rocky reputation as far as reliability, but on this one so far, I shot perfectly fine with it. I haven't had a chance to put too many different types of ammos through it, but I've just been throwing random steel case through it, and it seems not to care. So, I think I'm going to try, with all the new guns I got this year and the projects I'm building, I think I want to try to retire my AR, my hog gun for a little while. And in this season, I want to try to take out some other guns and try to get me some pigs with some other guns. I've already shot plenty of stuff with that AR, but I think it's time to give some other guns a shot. Anyways, I think that's it for the VZ-58. We're going to be back in 1 week. I'm going to be trying to post weekly again. Now that I have access to the new range, I can get to these private bays and pretty much have it all to myself. I have berms on all 4 sites on that particular one that I filmed on, which is always going to be the one I'm going to try to go to. So I'm really going to help, hopefully it's going to help me open up my content a little bit more to where I'll be able to do a little bit more stuff with the guns. I'll be able to do a little bit more, maybe some ammo testing, stuff like that. Play around a little bit more with the content and not worry so much about having to drive super long far out to the ranch in order to be able to film. So I'm hoping everything's gonna start kind of picking back up again. Anyways, I'll see y'all again next week. I think next week we're gonna be going ahead and taking a look at the Galil, and I may be doing some non-gun review post here in between. I need to do an update on the PPS-43 and a couple other things. So I'll see y'all later.